The shocking truth behind Harriet Tubman's escapes. Her name is etched into history as the fearless woman who led enslaved people to freedom, known as the Moses of her people. But beyond the schoolbook version lies a darker, more astonishing truth, a truth that reveals not just bravery, but a story that borders on the miraculous. Imagine a world where a single mistake meant chains or death, where bounty hunters tracked every step, and the law itself declared you property. Yet, one woman, unarmed and illiterate, defied an empire. Harriet Tubman didn't just escape once. She returned again and again, pulling dozens out of slavery's grip, and the way she did it will shock you. Before we uncover the hidden layers of her escapes, make sure you subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. More untold legends and forgotten truths are coming your way, and you don't want to miss the next revelation. Because Harriet's story isn't just about survival. It's about vision, signs, and choices that defy explanation. Tonight, we pull back the curtain on a legend, and what you're about to learn will change the way you see her forever. Harriet Tubman is remembered as a fearless conductor of the Underground Railroad, a woman who defied the chains of slavery and led dozens to freedom. In the popular version of her story, she is a Moses of her people, a symbol of courage who risked her life countless times to free others. Schoolbooks describe her as a guiding light, whispering directions under the cover of night, using the North Star to lead frightened fugitives to safety. It is the image of a heroic woman who outsmarted slave catchers and never lost a passenger. But behind this polished version, questions linger. How did she succeed so many times when the odds were stacked against her? The common tale often begins with her own escape in 1849, when Harriet fled from Maryland to Philadelphia. Alone, penniless, and with only her faith to guide her, she crossed rivers, trudged through forests, and followed whispers of safe houses until she reached freedom. This escape is retold as an almost cinematic act of bravery, the first step of a legendary mission. Yet the reality was far harsher. Hunger, exhaustion, and the constant fear of betrayal weighed heavily on her. Still, the story is told as if destiny itself had cleared the path for her success. What captivates most people is not only her escape, but her decision to return. Again and again, Harriet risked capture and death to lead others out of bondage. Each journey carried the thrill of danger and the hope of liberation. To the public, this became her defining trait, a savior who refused arrest until her people were free. Families whispered her name with reverence, and even slave catchers grudgingly admired her cunning. But the common version rarely reveals how perilously close she came to being caught, or the deeper forces she believed were guiding her steps. The known version of her legend highlights her clever use of songs, coded messages, and natural signs to communicate. She is portrayed as an almost mythical guide who could vanish into the woods or appear like a shadow to rally frightened escapees. This is a Harriet Tubman enshrined in history, tireless, unwavering, and blessed with an unbreakable spirit. But this narrative leaves out the moments of paralyzing fear, the haunting visions that steered her choices, and the unexplained events that seemed to protect her. The story as we know it feels complete, until we dig deeper. And that is where the shocking truth begins to surface. Harriet Tubman's escapes were not just feats of courage. They were filled with strange twists, prophetic dreams, and near supernatural turns of fate. The version everyone hears is inspiring, yes, but it hides the eerie details that made her more than human in the eyes of those who followed her. The question is not whether she was brave, we know she was, but whether her success came solely from bravery or from something else entirely. What if her legendary escapes were shaped by forces that defied explanation? The mid-19th century United States was a nation torn in two, where slavery was not only an institution, but law enforced with brutal precision. For an enslaved person, even the thought of escape meant defying a system that had built its wealth on human chains. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 made things even harsher. Anyone caught helping escapees could face prison, fines, or violence. Slave catchers roamed freely, and reward for runaways often exceeded what most farmers earned in a year. Into this hostile world stepped Harriet Tubman, a woman barely 5 feet tall, who would soon strike fear into the hearts of those who hunted her. How could she survive when the entire system seemed designed to crush her? The Underground Railroad is often described as an organized network of safe houses and brave abolitionists, and in many ways it was. Churches, barns, and secret attics became sanctuaries for those fleeing north. But this image of a flawless, coordinated rescue chain is misleading. In truth, it was fragmented, dangerous, and filled with spies. Harriet often had no map, no reliable allies, and sometimes no safe houses at all. She relied on intuition, coded songs, and sheer daring. This twist challenges the comforting idea of a perfectly hidden network, revealing instead a fragile system where betrayal lurked at every corner. Within this fractured landscape, Harriet stood out. Unlike many who used a railroad once and disappeared into freedom, she chose to return again and again. Each time she walked back into slave territory, she was risking not only her own life, but the lives of those she guided. This decision was unthinkable to most, and yet she carried herself with a calm certainty, as though she knew she would not be caught. Was it courage? Was it faith? Or was it something else? Something that even her allies struggled to understand? This doubt deepens the mystery of her escapes. Harriet's presence became both a whisper and a warning. To the enslaved, her arrival was a miracle. To the slave catchers, she was a phantom, slipping through their nets with impossible precision. Stories spread of her uncanny timing, arriving minutes before patrols passed, hiding in places no one would search, changing routes at the last second. These tales blurred the line between human intelligence and something more mystical. Was she simply a master of reading the land, or was she guided by an unseen hand? Each retelling only added to her legend. The cultural weight of her actions cannot be overstated. In a time when enslaved people were seen as property, Harriet Tubman embodied resistance itself. Every successful escape humiliated the system and inspired others to dream of freedom. But there's another layer rarely discussed. Her visions, her sudden insights, and the eerie coincidences that turned near-death situations into narrow escapes. The context of the Underground Railroad explains her stage, but it cannot fully explain her success. And that gap between history and legend is where the shocking truth begins to take shape. Harriet Tubman's escapes were not the polished stories told in classrooms. They were brutal, exhausting, and filled with moments that defied reason. As a child, she had suffered a severe head injury when an overseer struck her with a metal weight. From then on, she experienced sudden seizures, visions, and vivid dreams. To some, these were symptoms of trauma. To Harriet, they were divine messages guiding her steps. She trusted these visions absolutely, and time after time, they seemed to save lives. When others doubted, she would say, "God's voice told me what to do." The unsettling truth is that her legendary escapes may have depended not only on courage, but on something she herself considered supernatural. On one occasion, while leading a group north, she suddenly insisted they change direction, refusing to explain why. Hours later, patrols were discovered waiting exactly where they had been heading. To her followers, this was proof that Harriet was chosen by God to lead them. To historians, it remains an eerie mystery. Did she read subtle signs no one else noticed? Or did her visions truly warn her of dangers unseen? These moments blur the line between faith and prophecy, and they transform her story into something larger than history alone. Her journeys were not without terror. There were nights when cries of children threatened to expose the group, when fear nearly broke the resolve of the fugitives. Harriet's answer was chilling and unforgettable. She carried a pistol, not only for protection against slave catchers, but to ensure that no one turned back. "You'll be free or die," she warned. It was a cruel necessity, born of the knowledge that hesitation could doom them all. This harsh truth reveals a side of Harriet often hidden from the heroic narrative. She was forced to be both savior and enforcer, carrying a burden that scarred her deeply. Another story tells of a night crossing where the group became trapped in a swamp. Exhausted and sinking, they begged to stop. Harriet, seized by a vision, urged them forward, insisting safety lay just ahead. Moments later, they stumbled upon a hidden cabin, where allies gave them food and shelter. To the group, it was nothing short of miraculous. Was it blind faith, coincidence, or something beyond explanation? These eerie moments left those who traveled with her convinced she was touched by the divine, a woman whose life was guided by more than instinct. The deeper we look, the more her escapes resemble trials by fire, visions, near-death choices, miraculous rescues. Harriet Tubman was no flawless heroine from a storybook. She was a woman haunted by pain, strengthened by faith, and driven by a certainty that made her appear unstoppable. Yet her story raises an unsettling question. Were these visions a gift or a curse born from suffering? This tension transforms her legend into something darker, forcing us to reconsider whether her escapes were merely acts of bravery or something far more mysterious. Harriet Tubman's story is often framed as history, but beneath the facts lies a tapestry of symbols that make her legend resonate far beyond her time. She was called Moses, not just as a compliment, but as a living metaphor for deliverance. Like the biblical prophet, she led her people across their own wilderness, from bondage into freedom. The swamps became her Red Sea, the stars her pillar of fire. Each trial was more than survival. It was a symbolic echo of a sacred story retold in flesh and blood. But this raises a haunting question. Did Harriet see herself as Moses, or was she carrying a burden no human should bear? Her visions, dismissed by some as a result of head trauma, carried immense meaning for her followers. To them, her seizures were not weakness, but signs of divine communion. Silence would often fall when she froze in a trance, as though the group knew she was receiving direction from beyond. In those quiet, unsettling moments, fear transformed into faith. What seemed terrifying became reassurance. This silence, heavy in charge, was more powerful than any speech. Yet it also reveals the loneliness of a leader who bore responsibility for life and death, decisions guided by voices only she could hear. The pistol she carried was also more than a weapon. It symbolized the harsh reality of freedom. Choice was not always an option. Her command, "You'll be free or die," echoes with both cruelty and justice. It was a ritual of sacrifice, stripping away hesitation and forcing fugitives to confront the ultimate cost of liberty. In that symbol, Harriet embodied both mercy and severity. She was protector and executioner, embodying the contradictions of deliverance. The darkness of that reality is often softened in retellings, but reveals the brutal truth that freedom demanded bloodless violence in the shadow of potential betrayal. Every escape carried its own tests. Crossing rivers in winter, moving in silence while dogs barked in the distance, trusting strangers in a land filled with informers. These trials were not only physical but psychological. They symbolized resilience, the stripping away of fear, and the forging of faith. To Harriet's companions, each obstacle was proof that they were chosen, that survival meant destiny. And yet, behind their courage stood her unwavering presence, a figure who seemed more myth than human. Did she embody their hopes, or did they project them onto her because they needed to believe in miracles? Seen through the lens of psychology, Harriet's silence, visions, and commands reflect trauma and resilience intertwined. She was scarred, yet those scars became the very source of her strength. Spiritually, she embodied sacrifice, a woman whose suffering turned into prophecy. Symbolically, she was Moses, warrior, seer, and mother all at once. And this paradox fuels her legend. She was not only a woman of flesh, but an idea larger than herself. The question that remains is chilling. Was her story the triumph of human will, or was it a hand of something greater writing history through her? Harriet Tubman's story is more than the tale of a brave woman. It is a story of resilience carved into human history with fire and sacrifice. Her escapes reveal a world where faith collided with fear, and visions carried the weight of survival. To many, she was Moses reborn, a symbol of deliverance when all hope seemed lost. To others, she was a woman scarred by violence. Carry her pain as both a burden and a weapon. This duality, human fragility and near-divine strength, makes her legend unforgettable. The shocking truth behind her escapes is that they cannot be explained by courage alone. Her life forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. Freedom was never free. It was fought for with sweat, with silence, with a heavy decision to keep moving when every step invited death. Harriet did not romanticize these trials. She endured them, and those who walked beside her saw not a myth, but a woman who somehow transformed weakness into strength. She was living proof that even the smallest figure could carry the weight of destiny. That paradox, the ordinary body carrying extraordinary purpose, is what leaves us in awe. Today, Harriet Tubman's name echoes in classrooms, books, and monuments. Yet behind the polished statue stands the raw figure of a woman trembling in swamps, holding a pistol with steady hands, whispering songs as codes in the night. Her legend is not diminished by the darkness. It is magnified by it. The shadows make the light shine brighter. And that is why her story endures. Because it tells us that even in the cruelest chains, the human spirit can find a way to break free. But the final twist is this. Harriet never stopped. Even after the Underground Railroad, she became a spy for the Union Army, a nurse, and a fighter until her last days. She never allowed herself the luxury of rest, carrying her burden until death. This relentless devotion is the ultimate symbol of her legend. Her escapes were only the beginning. The shocking truth is that Harriet Tubman lived her entire life as an escape. From slavery, from silence, from the limits others tried to impose. And in doing so, she escaped the grasp of time itself. So as we close this chapter, remember, Harriet Tubman was not just a hero of the past. She is a challenge to the present. Her story demands that we ask what chains still bind us and what courage it will take to break them. If her story moved you, subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Become a member to support our work and help us bring more hidden truths to light. More stories like this are on the way, each revealing the dark, forgotten layers behind the legends. Don't miss the next revelation. It may change the way you see history forever.